Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour. India's Home Minister Amit Shah says giving citizenship is India's sovereign right. Will be no compromise on the issue. Asserts the law will never be rolled back. India reiterates urgent need for reforms in the United Nations Security Council. Says United Nations needs to evolve to avoid obsolescence and also irrelevance. US House of Representatives passes a landmark bill that gives TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance 6 months to divest US assets or face a ban. China calls it an act of bullying that will backfire. Europe moves closer to adopting world's first artificial intelligence rules. EU lawmakers endorse political deal on AI rules. EU countries set to give their formal nod to the deal in May. India's Home Minister Amit Shah dispelled all confusion and misconception surrounding the CAA and asserted that CAA will never be taken back. Just ahead of the 2024 general elections, the Indian government notified the rules for the Citizenship Amendment Act, that is the CAA, which was passed by Parliament 4 years ago.
सीए का कानून कभी वापस नहीं जाएगा और भारत की नागरिकता सुनिश्चित करना ये भारत का विषय है, भारत की संप्रभुता का निर्णय है। इसके साथ हम कोई कॉम्प्रोमाइज नहीं कर सकते।
In an interview, Home Minister explained that CAA seeks to offer refuge to persecuted religious minorities from neighboring countries and does not impact the citizenship status of Indian Muslims. Home Minister said that it is the moral responsibility to provide refuge to the people who were part of Akhand Bharat and were prosecuted or tortured.
अखंड भारत के जो लोग हिस्सा थे और जिन पर धार्मिक प्रताड़ना हुई है उसको शरण देना मैं मानता हूं हमारी नैतिक जिम्मेदारी है और हमारी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल रिस्पांसिबिलिटी। जब विभाजन हुआ तब पाकिस्तान में 23% हिंदू थे, हिंदू और सिख थे। आज 3.7% बच गए। कहां गए सारे? 1951 में हिंदुओं का प्रतिशत 22% था। मैं 51 की बात कर रहा हूं। बांग्लादेश की 51 के आंकड़े ऊपर हमारे पास है। 2011 की जनगणना में वो 10% रह गए। कहां गए वो लोग? अफगानिस्तान 1992 के पूर्व में 92 के आंकड़े मेरे पास लगभग 2 लाख सिख और हिंदू थे और आज करीब 500 बच गए।
Amit Shah gave assurance to the minorities that there is no need to fear as there is no provision in CAA to take away anyone's citizenship.
इस देश के अल्पसंख्यक माइनॉरिटीज या तो किसी और व्यक्ति को डरने की जरूरत नहीं है क्योंकि सीएए में किसी की नागरिकता लेने का प्रावधान ही नहीं है। सीएए सिर्फ और सिर्फ 3 देश अफगानिस्तान, पाकिस्तान और बांग्लादेश से हिंदू, सिख, बौद्ध, क्रिश्चियन और पारसी जो जैन और पारसी शरणार्थी आए हैं इनको उनका अधिकार देने का कानून है, नागरिकता देने का कानून है जिससे इनके जीवन की वेदनाओं को हम कम कर पाए।
On international media terming CAA as an anti-Muslim law, Home Minister Amit Shah said that this law cannot be seen in isolation. Bhutanese Prime Minister Tshering Togbe will arrive in New Delhi on a 5-day official visit to India at the invitation of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This will be his first overseas visit after assuming office in January. During the visit, the Prime Minister of Bhutan will call on India's President Draupadi Murmu and will also hold bilateral talks with Prime Minister of the country. India's External Affairs Minister and other Indian dignitaries will also call on Prime Minister of Bhutan. The visit of Bhutanese Prime Minister will prove an opportunity to the two sides to review the partnership progress. The Union Cabinet has approved agreements to strengthen bilateral relations between India and Bhutan, an MOU on general supply of petroleum, oil, lubricants, that is POL, and related products was signed between the two nations. An agreement was inked in the food safety area. Both nations also approved an MOU on cooperation in the field of energy efficiency and energy conservation measures. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address the beneficiaries of PM Swanidhi scheme on Thursday in the national capital. Guided by the vision of the Prime Minister to provide economic support to the marginalized sections, PM Swanidhi provides hand-holding support to street vendors. It was launched on 1st of June 2020 amidst the global economic crisis caused by the pandemic. On the occasion, the Prime Minister will also distribute loans under the scheme to 0.1 million street vendors. Prime Minister will also lay the foundation stone of 2 additional corridors of Delhi Metro's Phase 4 during the program. These corridors will together be of more than 20 kilometers length and will help provide connectivity and further reduce traffic congestion. India has once again called for reforms in the UN Security Council on an urgent basis, stressing on the role of UN Security Council that it plays in efforts towards resolution of conflicts and for sustaining peace. India slammed the United Nations for being frozen in time. India's permanent representative to the UN, Ruchira Kamboj, said that the United Nations needs to evolve to avoid obsolescence and also irrelevance. The Security Council, as the institutional architecture primarily responsible for maintenance of international peace and security. Kamboj said,
one of the most important requirements is therefore to strengthen the capacity of this council to address the issues in front of it, by making it representative of contemporary realities and by undertaking reform to make it more effective. For its part, for our part, India has indeed walked the talk, ensuring that the African Union became a full-fledged member of the G20 during our presidency last year. The United Nations Security Council simply needs to follow suit.
Kamboj said the objective of peace building should be to break silos and to promote post-conflict peace building and also recovery. India has consistently contributed positively and substantially to peace building efforts, underpinned by our efforts to give voice to the countries in the global south.
The peaceful settlement of disputes is key for the maintenance of international peace and security and the promotion of the rule of law. Dialogue and diplomacy should be the preferred path to resolve differences in an atmosphere free from fear and coercion.
Women have long made an outsized contribution to peace, development and human rights, and India takes the lead. Ruchira Kamboj highlighted India's efforts to put women in key positions in peacekeeping endeavors at the United Nations, where the session on financing for gender equality took place. Currently, there are 108 Indian women peacekeepers deployed in the UN peacekeeping mission worldwide. This includes military observers and staff officers, contingent officers and soldiers, as well as 3 Indian all-women female engagement teams deployed in peacekeeping missions in Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo and the Golan Heights. Driven by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision of women-led development, the G20 had adopted a full-fledged action plan on gender equality and empowerment of women during India's presidency last year. Kamboj said India will continue to remain steadfast in contributing to these efforts globally.
We need to acknowledge that the meaningful participation of women and youth in decision-making strengthens prevention efforts and deepens the effectiveness of peace building in post-conflict situations. Women police officers and peacekeepers play an indispensable role in furthering the women, peace and security agenda in post-conflict situations, and this does need to be further incentivized and further facilitated.
The Indian Ministry of Defence has signed 2 contracts with Hindustan Aeronautics Limited for the acquisition of 34 advanced light helicopters. The deal was sealed for procuring 25 advanced light helicopters utility for the Indian Army and 9 advanced light helicopters for maritime role for the Indian Coast Guard under the Buy Indian Indigenously Designed, Developed and Manufactured category. The Indian Army version advanced light helicopters are designed to carry out search and rescue, troop transportation, internal cargo and casualty evacuation operations. India is making a strategic push towards self-reliance in semiconductors by leveraging its design expertise and hopes of strengthening the global supply chain. Soon, domestic chip production will not be a distant dream. DD India's Jessica Taneja gets us more.
With the inauguration of domestic semiconductor projects, India has strengthened its manufacturing value chain. This domestic microchip production will not only leverage the nation's robust software base and design expertise, but also significantly bolster the global supply chain. India has close to 50,000 plus engineers designing practically every complex chip in the world. This will become India's first commercial semiconductor fab or chip making factory.
चिप मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सिर्फ एक इंडस्ट्री मात्र नहीं है, ये विकास का वो द्वार खोलती है जो असीम संभावनाओं से भरा हुआ है। इस सेक्टर से न सिर्फ भारत में रोजगार के नए अवसर बनने वाले हैं, बल्कि टेक्नोलॉजिकल एडवांसमेंट्स के क्षेत्र में भी बड़ी प्रगति होने वाली है।
In order to reduce dependence on imports, significant infrastructure investments are being pumped in to build a complete domestic value chain for semiconductors. Factor this. In December 2021, the government announced a $10 billion package to incentivize manufacturing semiconductors in India. Last year in June, American semiconductor toolmaker Applied Materials invested $400 million to build engineering center in Bengaluru. US chipmaker Micron received 50% fiscal support from government to build a semiconductor facility. And now investments of more than $11.5 billion for semiconductor design, manufacturing and technology development are being poured in. With demand for semiconductors in India expected to reach $100 billion by next year, it's become a strategic industry of national importance. As the global semiconductor market size is projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in the next 5 years, India is positioning itself accurately to attract global semiconductor companies with a mix of policies, government incentives, and investment in research and development. Jessica Taneja for DD India.
All right, let's take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across India. Indian Army's Aviation Corps raised its first squadron of Apache attack helicopters in Jodhpur on March 15th. The first choppers of the unit are expected to arrive in India in May this year from the United States. The Indian Army has signed a contract for acquiring 6 Apache helicopters from the US. One person died and 6 were injured after a car hit several people on Wednesday late evening in Delhi. The injured are under treatment in a hospital. The car driver is also injured and is undergoing treatment. The police have registered a case and investigation is underway. To accelerate the adoption of electronic vehicles in India, Heavy Industries Ministry has announced the Electric Mobility Promotion Scheme 2024. The scheme will run from 1st April until July. Only the electric two-wheelers and electric three-wheelers are eligible for benefits under the scheme. The move will provide further impetus to green mobility in India. India's first indoor athletics centre and state-of-the-art aquatic centre has been set up at Kalinga Stadium in the eastern state of Odisha. The world-class sports facility will further strengthen the state's robust sports ecosystem and help athletes train and compete round the year without being affected by external weather conditions. Up next, we're heading for a short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. Calm in Haitian capital extends into second day after Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry resigns. US and UN begin to withdraw staff in a sign they fear peace might not hold. Russia warns Ukraine conflict could spin out of control due to ill-considered actions of some. North Korea holds military demonstration involving tanks in its latest show of force as South Korea and the United States wrap up joint drills.
Why have the big 5 powers of the United Nations Security Council seen no change in 8 decades? Who is stalling reform of the world body, and for how long can we wait? Are we truly alone in the universe, or are there aliens who keep playing hide and seek with us? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour and I'm Preeti. A TikTok bill that could potentially lead to it being banned in the United States is moving forward to the Senate. The wording of the bill, approved by the House, calls for TikTok to divest from its Chinese-owned parent company ByteDance within 6 months. In June 2020, India became the first country to ban TikTok. DD India's Caroline Malone sends us a report from Washington.
Advocates of the TikTok bill say it poses a national security threat to the around 170 million users in the US, which is the biggest user base in the world. They say it has the potential for China to access data or to use malicious software on TikTok in the United States. Well, a bipartisan group of lawmakers decided to approve the TikTok bill by an overwhelming majority in the House, and that bill will now be considered by the upper level of Congress, by the Senate. But TikTok users have actually been calling their congressional representatives to complain, saying that it is a crucial part of their lives and, for many people, a part of their livelihoods. In fact, a TikTok-funded study suggests the app contributes billions of dollars in revenue for small businesses and particularly for people in the food and beverage industry. Previously in the US, the state of Montana tried to ban TikTok outright, and that actually failed. And there is a suggestion that this type of bill could be considered unconstitutional if it became law, especially because in the US there's the First Amendment rights, which allows for free speech. Some lawmakers want to see a wider digital privacy bill instead, which acts on all foreign-owned apps and also protects users on all social media platforms, including the likes of X and Facebook. Caroline Malone in Washington for DD India.
Meanwhile, China has called the bill as an act of bullying that will backfire. TikTok CEO has vowed not to stop legal fighting and advocating.
We will not stop fighting and advocating for you. We will continue to do all we can, including exercising our legal rights, to protect this amazing platform that we have built with you. We believe we can overcome this together.
A Georgia judge has dismissed some of the charges against former U.S. President Donald Trump and his allies in the Georgia election interference case. Fulton County Judge Scott McAfee noted that allegations by state prosecutors that Trump and his co-defendants tried to get Georgia officials to violate their oaths of office did not offer enough information to move forward with. The judge left 35 other criminal counts intact, including 10 against Trump. The central racketeering charge against Trump and his remaining 14 co-defendants remains in place. Trump and his co-defendants have pleaded not guilty to charges that they formed a criminal conspiracy to seek to overturn Trump's loss to Biden in Georgia in the 2020 election. Haiti's capital was calm on Wednesday, 2 days after Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry resigned. The US and UN, meanwhile, began to withdraw staff in a sign they fear that peace might not hold. The US Southern Command has sent a team of Marines to ensure the protection of the US Embassy in the Caribbean country. DD India's Latin American correspondent Mary Trini Mena has more details on this.
The United States has announced the deployment of a fleet of Marines to Haiti after the resignation of the country's prime minister. According to U.S. officials, an anti-terrorism security team has been sent to the capital, Port-au-Prince. The U.S. Embassy remains open, although with limited operations. The capital is currently controlled by heavily armed civilians. The U.S. Department of State has warned U.S. citizens not to travel to Haiti. On Monday, Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry agreed to step down from his duties while a transitional council is going to be implemented. The council will exercise presidential power, and its mission is to appoint a new prime minister and a new electoral council. The goal is to hold elections later in 2024 to improve the political and social crisis in the Caribbean nation. However, experts have warned that the success of Haiti's transition will depend on whether the gangs currently in control can be part of the negotiations. Meanwhile, the Kenyan government, which had agreed with Haiti to send police forces, has decided to pause the deployment of security forces to the island. African officials said they are going to evaluate the agreement once a new Haitian government is in place. Mari Trinimene in Caracas, reporting for DD India.
Let's get to updates on the Russia-Ukraine conflict now. Russia claims to have successfully intercepted and shot down 58 Ukrainian drones on Wednesday. The Russian security service in Belgorod said its building was struck by a Ukrainian drone attack, though no casualties were reported. The external facade of the building was damaged and the windows were broken, while Ukraine said that its air force had launched multiple attacks on Russian military personnel and equipment, including ammunition depots and other key targets. It added Ukrainian forces targeted Russian personnel, military equipment, air defense systems and other targets as well. Meanwhile, Russia warned the war in Ukraine could spin out of control due to the ill-considered actions of one or two NATO countries on Wednesday.
Due to ill-considered actions of one or two EU or NATO countries, the Ukrainian crisis may easily spill beyond its geographic borders, acquire quite a different scale and spin out of control.
In more news, European Union countries agreed to provide 5 billion euros for military aid to Ukraine as part of a revamp of an EU-run assistance fund on Wednesday. Ambassadors from the EU's 27 member countries agreed to the overhaul of the European Peace Facility Fund at a meeting in Brussels. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said that we will support Ukraine with whatever it takes to prevail. Meanwhile, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said this is yet another powerful and timely demonstration of European unity and determination in achieving our common victory. Lawmakers in the European Parliament voted in favour of the Artificial Intelligence Act 5 years after regulations were first proposed. The rules will cover high-impact, general-purpose AI models and high-risk AI systems, which will have to comply with specific transparency obligations and EU copyright laws. It restricts the government's use of real-time biometric surveillance in public spaces to the cases of certain crimes, prevention of genuine threats such as terrorist attacks, and searches for people suspected of most serious crimes. A total of 523 EU lawmakers voted in favour of the deal, while 46 were against and 49 abstained. EU countries are set to give their formal nod to the deal in May, with the legislation expected to enter into force early next year and apply in 2026, although some of the provisions will kick in earlier. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was questioned about the White House's history of digitally altering photos on Tuesday. She denied doing so and inquired if she was being asked the question due to UK's current situation, where Princess of Wales apologised after she said that she edited a Mother's Day photograph of her and her children.
Altered? Not that I know of. I would say no. Why would we digitally alter photos? Are you talking about? Are you comparing us to what's going on in the UK?
Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. will be meeting U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken early next week to tackle corruption and security matters. Marcos vowed to defend the Philippines' maritime claims after Chinese President Xi Jinping called on the armed forces to coordinate preparations for military conflicts at sea. Their meeting comes on the heels of heightened tensions between the Philippines and China over territorial disputes in the South China Sea. A 2016 ruling by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague found that China's sweeping claims had no legal basis, but Beijing has rejected the ruling, claiming indisputable sovereignty over most of the South China Sea. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un guided a military demonstration involving tank units on Wednesday. Kim also expressed great satisfaction that a new type of main battle tank successfully demonstrated its striking power in its first display of performance. Kim also emphasized the need to organize intensive exercises, simulating an actual war, and training matches for enhancing combat capability to be able to carry out any combat mission promptly and accurately in any contingency. Kim was joined by senior officials, including Defense Minister Kang Sung-nam, at the event. Professors from medical schools in South Korea are considering resignations as a collective action to pressure the government to address the prolonged walkout by trainee doctors. Medical professors from 19 universities, including Seoul National University and University of Ulsan, convened online on Tuesday to form a joint emergency response committee and decide whether to collectively submit resignations by Friday. Each participating medical school will collect opinions from its professors and teaching doctors. The latest move came amid escalating tensions between the government and the medical circles over the plan to hike the medical school enrollment quota by 2,000 seats beginning next year to address a chronic shortage of doctors. Waiting for a short break. You're watching DD India News Hour. But after the break, Israel says it will flood Gaza with aid. However, will ensure aid coming by sea will not help Hamas. No breakthrough in Nigeria abduction crisis. Kidnappers demand $620,000 for release of 286 students and staff members. And around 500,000 giant sequoias, also known as giant redwoods, are thriving in Britain.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Why have the big five powers of the United Nations Security Council seen no change in 8 decades? Who is stalling reform of the world body, and for how long can we wait? Are we truly alone in the universe? Or are there aliens who keep playing hide and seek with us? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles, and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger, and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science, and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
Welcome to Jaipur.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour and I'm Preeti. A quick relook at the top stories once again. India's Home Minister Amit Shah says giving citizenship is India's sovereign right, asserts that there will be no compromise on the issue, dismisses any chance of rollback. India reiterated the urgent need for reforms in the United Nations Security Council. India's permanent ambassador at the UN, Ruchira Kamboj, says the United Nations needs to evolve to avoid obsolescence and also irrelevance. US House of Representatives passes a landmark bill that gives TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance 6 months to divest US assets or face a ban. China calls it an act of bullying that will backfire. Europe moves closer to adopting world's first artificial intelligence rules. EU lawmakers endorse political deal on AI rules. EU countries set to give their formal nod to the deal in May. Let's get you more on Israel-Hamas crisis now. Israel will try to flood the Gaza Strip with humanitarian aid from a variety of entry points as international pressure mounted to address the growing problem of hunger in the besieged enclave. Israeli military spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said that they have placed no limits on the amount of aid that will be allowed into Gaza. He, however, blamed failures by the aid agencies for the delays. Earlier on Wednesday, the military announced that 6 aid trucks with supplies from the World Food Organization had entered the northern part of the Gaza Strip through a crossing in the security fence known as the 96th Gate. More such convoys would follow, as well as deliveries from other entry points, complemented by airdrops and seaborne aid cargoes. Israel's defense minister has also said that they will ensure aid coming in by sea will benefit the Palestinian civilians in Gaza and not Hamas.
The humanitarian issue that will soon be on the agenda surrounding the expected arrivals of vessels is a central issue in order to allow supply to the civilians and not to Hamas. Any such act weakens Hamas, strengthens our grip and allows us to turn the ball on Hamas' head. We will continue to do so because it allows us operationally to complete our mission.
US Air Force has released a video, it said, showed an airdrop over Gaza on Wednesday. The Air Force has used C-17 Globemaster III and a C-130J Super Hercules to airdrop the aid. More humanitarian aid was being airdropped by multiple countries into Gaza during the first couple of days of Ramadan, when Muslims around the world fast during the day. The German Air Force too started an operation to supply aid to people in Gaza on Wednesday. The first Bundeswehr German Army aircraft took off from France to Jordan. Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said that the first airdrops of humanitarian aid over the Gaza Strip could take place by the end of the week. Germany has deployed a total of 2 aircraft for as many flights as necessary and possible. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that the Israeli government has a responsibility and obligation to ensure the job of humanitarian agencies working in Gaza is not disrupted.
The Israeli military, the Israeli government have a responsibility and an obligation to do everything possible to ensure that the humanitarians can do their jobs. And among other things, that means making sure that if there's a humanitarian facility that's clearly identified, it's not struck. It means making sure that if there's a supply mission, a convoy, trucks going to a particular place at a particular time, that the Israeli military does everything possible to ensure its secure passage.
Turkey and Iraq are due to hold talks in Baghdad on Thursday amid strained ties over security and energy issues. The talks also come as the government in Baghdad signals negotiations about the withdrawal of US-led coalition forces in Iraq are likely to continue past the US election in November. Washington and Baghdad began talks about pulling American troops out of Iraq after US forces came under a series of attacks in the country from Shiite Muslim armed groups following Israel's military operation being launched in Gaza. DD India's correspondent Ollie Barrett tells us more from Baghdad.
Turkey that these talks will focus on issues around security and defense and energy, cooperation on things like renewable energy. But you're right to say that ties have been strained between Turkey and Iraq in recent months. One of the reasons that ties have been strained is over Turkish military operations against PKK Kurdish militants in the north of Iraq. Iraq has seen some of those military operations as a violation of its sovereignty, but Turkey insists that those operations will and need to continue against PKK militants, which it sees as terrorists. The other reason that ties have been strained between the two countries is over a crucial issue for the Iraqi economy, which is oil, and there is a key oil pipeline that moves oil from Iraq into Turkey and beyond into the international market. Now, that particular pipeline has seen operations paused because of a row between the two countries, and that will clearly be a focus of discussions here in Baghdad as well. We know also that renewable energy is going to be on the agenda, but as I say, oil is absolutely critical for the Iraqi economy, which during a period of stability over the last year or so has started to fare quite well. We've seen, for example, increasing exports of oil to countries like India. Iraq and Russia have been locked in something of a battle to become and to be India's main crude oil supplier. So all of these issues are very important to the Iraqis, but clearly also to Turkey, some of the issues that are going to be discussed here in Baghdad, and that's why they are sending what they say is a very high-level delegation here indeed. The Foreign Minister of Turkey, the Defense Minister of Turkey, and one of Turkey's top intelligence chiefs as well, coming here for these discussions. They don't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, but at the same time, they are neighbours. It is also the case that the government here in Baghdad, while it doesn't approve of the Turkish military operations that sometimes cross into Iraqi territory, is also not well disposed to the PKK Kurdish group in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. There is also a willingness to cooperate on things like renewable energy and to try and get that oil pipeline moving if possible, supplying oil through Iraq into Turkey via that key route. So there are absolutely areas on which the two sides can see eye to eye, despite all of those reasons that ties have been difficult at times.
Gunmen who kidnapped 286 students and staff from a school in northern Nigeria last week have demanded a total of 1 billion naira, that is $620,000, for their release, a spokesman for the families of the hostages and a local councillor said. Northeast Nigeria was rocked by terror on March 7th as gunmen abducted dozens of children in the northern part of the country. A community leader who acts as a spokesman for the families of the hostages said he had received a call on his phone from the kidnappers on Tuesday. Idris Ibrahim, an elected official from the Kuriga Ward Municipal Council, confirmed the ransom demand and the amount. He added that the security forces were taking adequate measures to secure the release of the students. Also, the country's information minister, Mohammed Idris, told reporters on Wednesday that Tinubu's position on the kidnappings in Kuriga was that security forces should secure the hostages' release without any payment to the kidnappers. Voters in Senegal will cast their ballots on March 24th after weeks of turmoil due to President Macky Sall's attempt to postpone the presidential election. 4 days after the start of campaigning for presidential election, one of the main contenders, detained opposition politician Bassirou Diomaye Faye, remains in jail as his backers take his campaign to the roads. Opposition leader Ousmane Sonko is also in detention. He was disqualified from the race over a defamation conviction that is not related to his imprisonment last July. Both Faye and Sonko were expected to be released after Parliament passed an amnesty bill on March 7th aimed at easing tensions, but it remains unclear if they'll be released before election day. In Nepal, Prime Minister Pushpa Dahal Prachanda secured vote of confidence for the third time. Prime Minister Dahal won 157 votes in favour, while 110 lawmakers stood against the vote of confidence. One of the lawmakers in the Nepali Federal Parliament abstained. A total of 268 votes were cast in Wednesday's vote of confidence tabled by Prime Minister Pushpa Dahal. There are 275 members in the House of Representatives of Nepal. The Prime Minister needed 138 votes to trust him. Due to discontent in governance, differences in power sharing and several other reasons, the alliance between Nepali Congress and CPN Maoist Centre broke, and a new alliance was forged by Prachanda with KP Sharma Oli-led CPN UML and other three parties, that is Rashtriya Swatantra Party, Janata Samajwadi Party and Unified Socialist. A Bangladeshi-flagged cargo vessel, MV Abdullah, carrying coal and manned by 23 crew members, has been hijacked by Somalian pirates in the Indian Ocean near Somalia coast. The ship was heading for Dubai from Mozambique's Maputo port when the pirates attacked. This is the second instance of a Bangladeshi-flagged ship hijacked by Somali pirates. MV Abdullah is owned by SR Shipping Lines, a sister company of Chattogram-based Kabir Steel and Re-Rolling Mill Group. Bangladesh Shipping Department officials said that they have already contacted various international organizations and embassies through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to aid in rescuing the ship and the sailors on board. In Bolivia's capital, La Paz, heavy rains continued unabatedly, damaging nearby houses. Heavy rains in the country's capital prompted authorities to declare a state of emergency after overflowing rivers destroyed many houses over the weekend and one person died. Bolivian President Luis Arce says that he pledges to send heavy machinery and troops to prevent further damage. More weather updates. Argentines too grapple with intense rains aftermath with reconstruction works. The downpour tore down the rooftops and prompted authorities to declare an orange alert and cancel flights. In the city of Campana, neighbors teamed up to remove the debris left from two roofs that collapsed due to hail and rain. The capital city metropolitan area downgraded the alert to yellow, warning of potential damages and disruption in daily life activities as the rains persisted. Let's take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across the world now. Peruvian authorities destroyed more than 20 tons of illegal drugs in the country's first massive drug burn this year. The drugs were confiscated in several operations between September 2023 and January this year and included cocaine, marijuana and ecstasy, among others. Peruvian Interior Minister Victor Torres said that most of the drugs had been seized in Piura, Ayacucho and Puno. 20 armed people boarded a cargo ship off the coast of Somalia and took control of it. It is the latest ship to be targeted following a resurgence of attacks by Somali pirates in recent months, although the maritime security firm did not specify that it was Somali pirates who boarded the ship. The incident happened around 600 nautical miles east of Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. A man has been killed and another critically injured following a gold mine collapse in Australia's Victoria state, where 28 other workers at the site were rescued. Emergency crews were called to the Ballarat coal mine in Mount Clear after reports of a rock fall. Paramedics were able to rescue one miner and airlifted to hospital in a serious condition. The miners who took refuge in a safety pod were winched to safety. Introduced to British country estates as a 19th century status symbol, giant sequoias, also known as the giant redwoods, are thriving in Britain. These are growing at a rate nearly equivalent to those found in their native range in the US state of California, which is 80,000 in Sierra Nevada mountains. The giant sequoias can live for more than 3,000 years and were originally introduced to Britain around the 1800s, where they were planted in the grounds of grand estates, becoming a Victorian-era symbol of wealth due to their rarity. A short break ahead, but still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. We tell you ahead how the EU and US markets fare on cues from producer price data and inflation trend ahead of next week's Fed meeting. Atletico oust Inter on penalties to reach Champions League quarters, while Dortmund beat Eindhoven 2-0 to reach the quarters. And remembering the greatest and most influential scientist of all times, Albert Einstein, on his birth anniversary today.
Why have the big five powers of the United Nations Security Council seen no change in 8 decades? Who Who is stalling reform of the world body, and for how long can we wait? Are we truly alone in the universe, or are there aliens who keep playing hide and seek with us? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News. Let's get to updates from the world of business now. The US stock market indices S&P 500 and NASDAQ edged lower on Wednesday as investors took profits in chipmaker stocks. The S&P lost 0.19% to close at 5,165 and the NASDAQ Composite falls 0.54% to 16,177, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed in with a margin gain of 0.1%. The investors have braced for producer price data and further clues on the inflation trend ahead of next week's Fed meeting. European shares touched new record highs on Wednesday. The pan-European stock 600 rallied up by 0.2%. The index earlier in the session hit an all-time high for the fifth time in the past 6 sessions. The German DAX has also touched an all-time high of 18,000 points on Wednesday, after the European Central Bank indicated a potential shift in their monetary policy in the months to come. Britain and Texas signed a statement of cooperation which aims to strengthen the trade and economic development ties between the UK and the southern US state. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said, in fact, and Britain's Business and Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch signed the agreement at Downing Street. Britain is seeking state-level deals with US states, while talks over a free trade agreement at a federal level have been frozen since President Joe Biden took office. Britain's Business and Trade Ministry said the agreement with Texas was targeting areas such as energy, life sciences and professional services. The agreement comes 4 months after a similar pact with Florida. Britain is also in talks with the likes of California, Colorado and Illinois. An International Monetary Fund mission is in Pakistan for a last review of a $3 billion standby arrangement. The 4-day review will begin on Thursday. Islamabad secured the last gasp rescue package last summer to avert a sovereign default. The last review, if successful, will immediately release a tranche of around $1.1 billion for the economically shattered country, while the remaining amount will be phased over the program's duration. On to sports now. Talking of the 8 teams that are all set to battle it out in the 2023 Champions League quarterfinals. On Wednesday, Atletico Madrid has reached the quarterfinals, ousting Inter Milan on penalties. It finished 2 each on aggregate at the end of extra time after Inter had thrown away a 2-goal advantage. Atletico goalkeeper Jean Oblak was then the hero, saving penalties from Alexis Sanchez and Davy Klaassen, before Inter's Loreto Martinez blasted his spot kick over as the Spanish side advanced in thrilling style. Another team which has reached the quarterfinals is the Borussia Dortmund, which secured a 2-0 win over PSV Eindhoven on Wednesday. Jadon Sancho and Marco Reus scored for Dortmund, and this is the first time that Dortmund has reached the Champions League last 8 place in 3 years. The rest 6 teams are reigning holders, that is Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain, FC Bayern Munich, Arsenal, Barcelona and Real Madrid. Indian off-spinner Ravichandran Ashwin regained top spot in the ICC men's test bowling rankings after his stellar performance in his 100th test. Ashwin took 9 wickets against England. The big haul helped Ashwin to overtake teammate Jasprit Bumrah to the premier position. Bumrah now shares the 2nd position with Australia's seamer Josh Hazlewood. Indian captain Rohit Sharma, who smashed 100 in Dharamshala, rose 5 places to reach 6th position, while Yashasvi Jaiswal moved up 2 places to reach the 8th position. The 17th season of India's Premier Cricket League, that is IPL, is just round the corner. Teams and players have begun their preparations already in their respective home states. IPL, which is home to dreams and aspirations of many Indian players, has a legacy of its own. One such player is Delhi's leg spinner Prince Chaudhary, who was picked by IPL franchise Punjab Kings for his base price $24,100. Prince spoke to DD India about his preparations and what it means to play in the cash-rich league.
सर पहले तो जब ऑक्शन से 3 दिन पहले मैं बड़ौदा के लिए निकल गया था अपना टूर्नामेंट खेलने, तो मैं वहाँ पर था तो मेरे पापा मम्मी सबका कॉल आया था। वो कह रहे थे हम सो नहीं पा रहे 2 दिन से। तो मैंने कहा आप टेंशन ना लो, जो होना होगा अच्छा होगा। तो उन्होंने कहा कोई बात नहीं, तू 1 दिन के लिए घर आ जा। तो मैं 19 को घर आ गया था वापस सुबह सुबह ही, जिस दिन ऑक्शन था। अपने घर वालों के साथ गया, ऑक्शन देखा और मैं वहाँ पे बार बार चेक भी कर रहा था फ़ोन में कि मेरा नाम आया, अभी तक नहीं आया। बट जब एक्सेलरेशन राउंड स्टार्ट हुआ शाम के 6:30-7 बजे, तब जाके मेरा नाम आया था और पंजाब ने मेरे लिए दाव किया था, तो बहुत अच्छा लगा।
March 14th marks the birth anniversary of the great physicist and Nobel laureate Albert Einstein. Einstein was born in 1876 and by 1905 he had worked out some of the most path-breaking research in the field of physics that changed the way the world viewed the subject. His equations help us to understand the universe, space, time, gravity, and to accurately count the atoms. They literally illuminate our lives and are applied to fields across science. We get to more in this report.
The mind of a genius and its impact on almost everything we do. We take a lot for granted because the applications of science have advanced to such an extent that we are experiencing a different quality of life. But one man was largely responsible for that, Albert Einstein. In 1905, a miracle year, Einstein published groundbreaking papers on the photoelectric effect, the Brownian motion, and the special theory of relativity. 10 years later, he added the general theory of relativity that incorporated gravitation.
GPS system relies heavily on Einstein's general relativity. The photoelectric effect is something which paved way for detecting light. So in order to detect light, earlier we started with photomultiplier tubes, and that relied exactly on photoelectric effect. And then it developed into CCDs and the cameras which we have today. Counting the atoms and the colloids, this is something which started the field of chemistry. We were able to count the number of atoms. Now we know how the gases behave. And this Brownian motion is not just applicable in physics or chemistry, it's also applicable in finance.
The photoelectric effect is the emission of electrons from a material caused by light. Special relativity shows us that the speed of light is independent of the motion of the observer.
And light has no mass.
Black holes are regions of space where gravitational pull is so strong that not even light can escape.
The photon which would have started from the sun starts 8 minutes earlier, comes to the earth after 8 minutes, and exactly 8 minutes have passed. For the photon, there is no time. When it started, when it was detected, there is no time for the photon. So it was absorbed and emitted at the same time. So that connected space and time together.
100 years after the general theory of relativity, science was able to confirm gravitational waves. At a macro level, Einstein's general relativity tells us about the curvature of space-time in 4 dimensions that cause gravity.
Einstein predicted the existence of gravitational waves in 1915, and subsequently, because these are what are ripples of space and time, if you have 2 black holes which are going around each other, they would create a ripple in space and time. Subsequently, when the technology is developed over time, after 100 years exactly in 2015, we detected gravitational waves.
His collaborations with other scientists was through correspondence. Satyendranath Bose's research around photons brought to light subatomic particles, later called bosons. Einstein engaged with India's political class on subjects like satyagraha, colonialism and industrialization. He even called the fellow Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore rabbi. Bureau Report, DD India.
All right, that's it in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and also Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.